Today I'm sharing some super fun and easy red, white, and blue DIY projects that will bring out your patriotic spirit. Welcome to the Chic Show. This red, white, and blue collaboration is hosted by Shabby Meets Bling, Up All Night DIY, and Jody at Southern Seasons. This is a random piece of chipboard that I found in my stash, and I'm going to give it a coat of Dixie Belle chalk paint in buttercream. I'm also going to be mixing together these two colors of milk paint. Milk paint is mixed with 1 part powder to 1 part water. And then let it sit for a few minutes so that it gets a little bit thicker. Now I'm using some painter's tape because I am going to make this into a sort of a flag, so I want my lines to be straight. In the end, it really didn't matter, but it did give me some guides to go by. So first of all, I painted the inside lines here with this red milk paint. I think it's Barn Red. And then after I did that, I realized that's not where I wanted the red paint. I wanted the red paint where the painter's tape is. So I did wipe it back and I painted over it once again with that white milk paint. I did have some bleeding underneath the tape, but that's fine because this is really going to have more of a hand-painted look anyway. Now I'm going to go back with that red milk paint and paint the other 3 lines. Milk paint can give a chippy look, and if you work with it a little bit, you can really get it to chip back nicely. So I'm just taking my finger sander and I'm sanding away the edges as well as on the top just a little bit to bring out some of those crackles. Now I'm going to remove that painter's tape at the top and sand away at that line just a little bit so that it's not quite so noticeable, and I am removing some of that red paint that did bleed through. I'm going to be using one of IOD's paint inlays. This is the Delft Blue in Azure, and I'm just going to cut that paint inlay to fit at the top. And the way that paint inlays work is you put a coat of paint down and let it dry, then you apply a second coat and apply the paint inlay while the paint is actually wet. So I'm adding on my second coat of paint here. And then I will spritz my paint inlay with some water and then lay it down into that wet paint. Once I have it in place, I went ahead and spritzed it again with some water and then dabbed away any excess water. I set this aside to dry overnight because I just have better luck with it that way. But technically, once it is dry, it lightens up a little bit like you see here, and you can spritz it with water and let it sit for about 30 seconds and then pull that backing sheet up. I did spritz mine again one more time before I pulled up that paper. As you can see, that white paint I used was not the same as what I put on the first time, so I really should have used that paint, but we'll age it up here in just a minute and make it match a little bit better. Paint inlays do need to be sealed, and I took it outside and used a spray sealer on it, and now I'm adding some antique wax by Waverly just to darken up that white paint a little bit. I also added on some of the Crackle Finish by Pent Art, both parts of it, part 1 and part 2, and then I let that dry, and then I added on some clear wax and then dark wax. The clear wax allows me to wipe away that dark wax a little bit easier so that it doesn't end up too dark. And this just brings out the crackles from the milk paint as well as the Pent Art Crackle Finish. I finished this piece off with a lace bow, and now it's ready to be added to a patriotic vignette. The next project is based on a project that I saw on Pinterest, and I'm not sure who posted it. I printed off some vintage bingo cards, one red, one blue, and decided to go with the blue, and I glued it to a piece of cardstock. I had this little chipboard fireworks piece from Dollar Tree, and I wanted it to be a little bit less white and more of a cream color, so I decided to use this brown ink pad, and I just kind of dabbed it all over. Now I'm using this ribbon that I found in my stash that I'm going to be gluing across the front of the bingo card, the red, and then I'm going to layer it with the white. I used a little bit of hot glue and I just glued it onto the back because I am going to kind of gather the front together. So you don't want to glue this real tight. You can see here I did glue it a little too tight and had to go back and pull it back and then loosen it up just a bit. Now I'm going to add on that white ribbon, and again I'm going to glue it in the back, leaving it loose enough that I can kind of gather it in the front. I am going to cinch this ribbon, but I went ahead and used a little bit of hot glue just to kind of help hold it while I did that. Now I'm going to add this little firework to the top and hot glue him in place just below that ribbon. I used a little bit of jute twine to cinch that area together right there, and then I hot glued on this little glitter star from Dollar Tree. I just want to remind you to check out the playlist in the description box below, along with all of our host channels. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with this little box, but the box wasn't quite tall enough. I love the scalloped edge, but I want to make the box a little bit taller, so I'm going to remedy that using some popsicle sticks. I cut off the rounded ends and then I cut them to the height that I wanted, and I needed 4 of these. Once I have them all cut, I'm going to hot glue them into each corner of the box. This will allow the top to sit a little bit higher to where I have more surface area on the bottom. And I have a very curious kitty there trying to help me. I used some clamps just to clamp these down while they dried. The top of the box did have a little bit of glitter, so I used my finger sander and sanded that down as best I could. Now I'm going to give both the top and the bottom a coat of sandy blonde DIY paint. And these are the 3 colors that I'm going to be using in Fusion for the red, white, and blue look. I used washi tape to tape off my lines because I'm going to have stripes on the bottom part of the box. Again, in the end, this is not going to matter because I let my paint dry too long, and when I pulled the tape away, it pulled all the paint off. So I would have been better off just to eyeball it, as it's going to look that way anyway. My goal was to have nice crisp lines, but that didn't happen, and that's okay. I just went with it, and I'm going to go ahead and use this dark red, I believe it's Highlander by Fusion, and paint those red lines in. For the top, I'm using this blue paint. I think it was Midnight Blue. I'm really not sure, but I love the scallop edge. It looked to me like a bunting. Now you can see here where I'm going to pull back that tape after it has dried. And so far, so good with a little bit of removal there. But once I pulled both of them away, it was just really not good. So I just went back and filled in with the red paint, and then went back with the white paint and filled in between those lines. I'm using a rubber star stamp that I found at a thrift store, and I'm stamping with a white ink pad and stamping all over the top of the lid. Because of my hand-painted look that I didn't really want, I went ahead and used some antique wax mixed with water to rub along all the surface areas. I did have a little bit of smearing here on those stars, so I did go back and kind of wipe that away. Apparently they were not quite dry enough. And here's a look at my Patriotic vignette from all the projects that I made today, as well as a couple of other vintage finds. Don't forget to check out our host channels and the playlist. Give us all a thumbs up, leave a comment, an emoji, anything really helps us. And if you want to watch another video, I suggest this one right here. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic and find me on lachicshop.com as well as Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Bye now.